All right, what's up, y'all? Um, Man, you would not believe how sometimes a week can just fly by. And actually, that's just me starting a video off with excuses. That's not the right way to start a video off, right? But today's just one of those days, and I'm wearing a freaking work shirt, like coverall type thing. I've been just doing a lot of stuff today, and I'm just like, yo, let me just get this video knocked out. Cause I mean, look at this. Like, this shirt makes me look like I have boobs. All right, let's just get that elephant out the room. I promise you, I work out. I do. I promise you. I got muscles. But this shirt, like, it's not. And, I was like, man, I was like, I could run home and change, but you know what? I'm like, I just need to get the video done, stop making excuses. So, all right, I got all the elephants out the room, I think, right? Address the shirt, which does not look good because I've been actually doing some work today, but it doesn't matter. Pay attention to the information I'm sharing that I've learned. But anyways, you guys know I attended the Mike Ferry event. If you still paying attention to this video, um, and I wanted to share each day, so I decided I would dedicate. Man, this is really killing me with the man, it's the way this shirt fits me. Looks so bad. Um, yeah, I think that looks a little better there. Yeah, it depends on how I sit. um, what was I saying? Yeah, okay, week two. So, day two was a 4 day event. Obviously, let's see, it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So, Friday's about a half day, right? So, it's not a full day, little rewards, celebration of Mike. He's been in business 50 years, so longer than I've been living, which is pretty incredible when you think about that type of time frame to be doing anything, work, job, business, anything, marriage, right? Kids, anything. 50 years is a long time and to be commended. But week two, so let's jump right in. I'm going straight from my notes. Like I said, I just told myself I'm going to make this video. And so I'm making it. I didn't really make time this week. It's been super busy to actually go through and critique the notes prior to. So you're just going to get the raw notes that I have written down. And, as always, you guys know, like Mike says, you got your notes in front of you as you present. So as I'm sharing with you all, I'm literally just looking at my notes and shooting from the hip. And when I say shooting from the hip, shooting from the notes that I have written. Um, so day two started off with Tina Turner. So I don't know if you all, depending on your age, I would assume you would know who Tina Turner is. But Tina Turner opened for Mike, and I thought that was so cool. One of the things that I did not know was that apparently Tina Turner has a residency right now in Las Vegas, and it's challenging to get tickets. She's got her own following. So to have her open for Mike on day two and perform her own song on Mike's stage is very impressive, and it just speaks to obviously the financial well-being of Mike, but also his versatility in sense of, oh, I don't even say versatility, but in his message of living a quality life or high quality life, and well, I guess good tied into versatility because Mike says a part of having versatility is experiencing new things or trying new things or doing new things. So I know Mike has a Think Big group. I'm not in that yet, YET yet. But in the Think Big group, they do things like I know he'll have them go to a store in Vegas and say, "Hey, don't leave until you spend 10 grand." Right? I know once a year, Mike's already talked about this, but they'll go to some place around the world and spend a week or 2 weeks, and obviously they spend 10, 20 grand on those trips. And I have not done that with Mike, but I have spent 20 grand before on my own personal trip with family. And so I know what that does to your psyche and to your mental when you do that. A lot of people may turn their nose up at that or look down on that and say, hey, you could totally do this trip for much less, or You could save that money or you could invest that money, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is, when you make a certain amount, and to, I guess you could say, be comfortable making a larger amount, whatever that number is different for everybody. But let's say if you're making 200,000 a year, what's going to take you to 500,000, 1 million, and to get your butt up and work, it's going to be partially necessity, right? And so Mike always talks about upgrade your lifestyle, upgrade everything, upgrade your wardrobe, upgrade your car, upgrade your house, upgrade your neighborhood, right? He talks about moving, either selling your house and buying a new one every 10 years, or at least renovating your house every 10 years. He talks about taking 50% of your clothes every year and just tossing them, or donate them, give them away, and buy a whole new wardrobe, things like that. I know at the Mike Ferry organization in Las Vegas, they buy all new computers every 2 years, right? So Mike's constantly upgrading. I know with his cars, puts 3,000 miles on it, then he gets another one, right? So I don't know if you guys remember the Rick Ross rhyme, by the time it need an oil change, I buy a new one because I'm spoiled, man. Remember? I don't know if you all ever heard that verse, but Mike Ferry actually lives that. So it's kind of interesting. I'm pretty sure Mike's been doing that long before Rick Ross ever rapped about it, but it's just interesting to see that, Mike's doing that type of thing. So to see Tina Turner open for Mike, it just fits right into with his message of, having someone of her caliber open at his event while she's got a residency of her own in Las Vegas, right? So that's pretty cool. So with that, let's jump right into, once again, I'm not sure if we covered it last week or not, but Mike harped on it again, controlling your emotions. It's a discipline. So Mike really went in on the fact that it's a muscle that you got to practice, that you got to exercise. And it goes, really into all the things that we know comes with being successful, especially as an agent, right? Whether it's exercising regularly, right? Having some type of exercise plan. When it comes to diet, right? Obviously, we don't have to be elite athletes per se, but I've just found that in business in general, period, whether we're selling real estate or not, you do better, you have more energy if you are exercising regularly and you're monitoring what you're eating, right? You're just going to have more energy. You're going to have a better body. Like today, for example, I don't like how this shirt fits me, but I wanted to get this video out. But, having a better, a non-working shirt, right? Obviously it's affecting my confidence in the way I'm presenting to you on this video, right? So if I had a better looking shirt on, I'd feel a little more confident, right? I do work out, do exercise, so I know that it doesn't look, I don't look how this shirt makes me look, but the way the shirt looks, it looks bad, in my opinion. So my confidence is affected, and this video is a prime example, right? So if you're walking in the room and you're a bit overweight, and people notice that, right? Obviously, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get a listing because you're overweight, but it just means that if you're in shape and you look like you're in shape and you're wearing clothes that are tailored and fitted to you and fit you properly, then there's a level of respect that's just a notch above someone who's not in shape, right? Doesn't mean you can't do high volume, because I know some agents that do hundreds of transactions and they are out of shape. So let's not get twisted, but you just feel better with that. And so I guess you say when you talk about controlling your emotions, what you're eating, exercising, what you're listening to daily, the books you're reading, and obviously the people that you're associating with, right? It's all a discipline to control the emotions and what's going on in your head, right? So Mike, I put a note here that Mike reads 300 books a year for a long time, right? Now, obviously, if you read 300 books a year, it's almost roughly about one book every day and a half, basically, right? Don't get caught up in the math. And I know it's 365 days, so day and a half, not quite, but we'll say a day and a quarter if you want to be analytical with me. But the point is, for me, the reason I wrote that down is I've seen two schools of thoughts when it comes to reading books. On one, I've seen, well, let's say three schools of thought. On one hand, I've seen the, you can read all these books, it doesn't matter, if you do the work, you're going to get the results, which is true, right? You don't necessarily have to read the books to take the action, right? If you go out and you talk to 50 people a day consistently, year over year, you're going to get better. Naturally, it's just not possible for you not to get better, and you're going to get the results, right? And then you can get a coach, dial that in, and right. But that's one school of thought, right? So the school of thought is, okay, you don't need to read. You just need to take the actions, period, and you will get the results, which is true. If you take the actions, you're going to get the results regardless of whether you read a book or not, right? Number one. So that's the first school of thought. Second school of thought is I like to reread the same couple of books, same few books, because, hey, it takes so much to implement the ideas in a book. What's the point of reading one book a week or one book every other day or one book a month when, you don't even remember what's in that book, or, there's 10 concepts in this one book and you only applied one, but what about the other 9, right? So some people say, hey, I'd rather reread the book as I reach different levels or as I implement 1 or 2 strategies, and now I'm at a different level. I see things differently. I'm mature. I'm smarter. I have more financial resources, whatever. Now I'll go back and read the same book again. I pull something different out of it. And so therefore I read the same 5 or 6 books, right? And I try to maximize everything that I can out of that book before I move on to the next one. So I might read the same 4 or 5 books for 2-3 years straight before I finally feel like I've extrapolated everything that I can from the book, and then I'll add a new book into the rotation, right? So that's the second school of thought. The third school of thought, which seems to be the most common, is, hey, leaders are readers. Try to, on average, read 1 book a week. And that is just something that is a part of your daily regimen if you want to be a tycoon or a big mega business builder. Right now, someone, let's say like Patrick Bet-David. I don't know if you know who that is, but Patrick Bet-David was a big time insurance agency owner. He built his own insurance business to several $100 million in revenue, and was able to sell that to, we'll say, Wall Street, or venture capital or private capital firm, a private equity firm, right? And he, with that deal, was able to net about $200 million personally to his pockets because he was a majority owner of the company. So this is a man that over the course of 10, 15 years went from salesmen like ourselves, selling insurance, pounding the phones, going over rejections, handling objections, blah, 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 to building a company that he was able to sell to Wall Street and walk away personally with $200+ million in his bank account, right? So that's who Patrick Bet-David is. He says in one of his videos that, he looks at it as like different levels. So he says if you're reading 1 book a month, you're kind of average, but you're on the playing field, right? He's like, if you're reading 1 book a quarter, you're not even really at the table. You're doing better than, people that are not reading, but you're just kind of playing around. And he's like, the real people that are serious about business, the real leaders, they're all reading 1 book a week. And he's like, if you're not reading 1 book a week, you're just playing games, right? And he actually even has a video that he challenges people, that anyone that's not a millionaire yet, he's like, hey, if you read, how does he say it? He says, hey, if you go to Amazon.com and you find every book with, let's say, over 500 reviews, that has every book with over 500 views and 5 stars on selling, human psychology, and marketing. He's like, if you read every single one of those books within the next 2 years, he's like, I guarantee you'll be a multimillionaire. That's what he says. And he says, if not, I'll pay the cost of your tuition for all those books. He's like, because it's not possible. So he believes that adamantly about reading one book a week. So for me, when Mike was talking about reading 300 books a year for a long time, to me that checks with chart. Now, if you do the math, there's 52 weeks in a year, so obviously 300 books a year is well over. Um, that's actually, wow, it's over 5 books a week. Let alone you're talking about one book a week, right? That's over 5 books a week. And he said did this for years. Now, where did Mike get that from? Mike got that from Earl Nightingale, one of the leading entrepreneurs, if you will, on personal development, on, I guess you could say, motivational speaking or motivational messages. I would argue that he's probably the pioneer of it. He's one of the first people I think that had his record go gold, The Strangest Secret, right? The first of its kind, not necessarily music, because it's not music, but the first personal development record to sell that number of copies individually. Like, I mean, obviously we all know Mike Ferry was a salesman for Earl Nightingale. So for me, that stood out because, again, I told you the 3 schools of thoughts. You don't need to read. You only need to read a few books because you can't remember everything that's in, the first book that you read. So why are you reading, 300 books, right? And then the last was, hey, you should be reading one book a week, right? And so looking at Earl Nightingale, looking at Mike Ferry, like I said, looking at Patrick Bet-David, to me, I personally made the decision. I'm not there yet. I'm not saying that I do it. I'm at about one book a month. I'm working my way to get to reading a little more, right? Building it like a muscle. But I personally would say I think there's something to be said about reading one book a week. I've just heard it so many times, and I've come across it from men that I look up to. When I say men, I look up to, excuse me, something on the tip of my tongue. This is, men that are making, I'll say at least 8 figures a year net, and that are worth 9 figures, right? And have been doing so for at least 10 plus years. Not fly by night, right? But people have been doing it for 10 plus years in their line of work. And the ones that I'm aware of, with one exception, they all are, I won't say adamant, but they all openly share that they read on a regular basis. So I think that it's your personal decision, but I think there's something to be said about you actually reading one book a month or a week. And to me, it's not so much about it's not so much about you implementing and knowing every single strategy and every philosophy that's in every single book. I mean, when you're reading 300 books, you're not going to remember every single thing. But to me, it is more about exposure. So for one, someone's taking their lifetime's work or a big, large chunk of their life and, condense it down into digestible pieces of paper that you can now spend, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, reading and getting that information that took them 5, 10, 20 years to live this out, maybe longer. And they, condensed it into the important parts and put it in a book that they thought was worth sharing. And so for one, you get that life experience from people from many walks of life as you're reading this, for one. 2, you get ideas. You get strategies, right? So maybe it's not necessarily that you 10 steps to 10 million, right? Maybe you don't follow all steps 1 through 10, but maybe just step 6, you go, I like that idea. I never thought of that. I'm going to implement that, and then all of a sudden that takes you to a whole new level, right? So Jim Rohn always talks about you go to the seminar, you take the course, you read the books, because you never know where the next idea or the next source of inspiration is coming from. So you do all of it, right? He's like, all of it you can. Again, Patrick Bet-David, he mentions attending seminars like Mike Ferry's once a quarter. He's like, he did this when he was building this, 9-figure business, right, from scratch. So there's something to be said when you see multiple people that are at a certain financial level all saying the same thing: read books, attend seminars, listen to the audios, right? So there's something to be said about that. So that's why for me it was so important writing that down, because it was like, okay, it was just confirmation that, hey, I personally need to ramp up the amount of books that I'm reading and actually make it a commitment to start pushing myself to get to that 1 week, a one book a week type of repetition, and to be able to sustain it, right? And to keep up with it, right? And make that lifestyle change. Because I think it is a lifestyle change, if we're being honest, right? And I think a lot of the time we spend scrolling social media could be replaced with reading the books. And I think that's probably the easiest transition. But just also, making sure that you have a book everywhere. I've heard some people say you should have 3 books, one in the house, one in the car, one at the office, right? So that way you're not trying to carry your book around and, all of a sudden you're like a man with a purse, right? But instead you're just, wherever you go, you know that you have your book there and you're reading that book, right? So, but anyways, I think that's enough about reading 300 books a year. I think it's imperative that at least one a week for sure. One thing I wrote down here is just a side note about Mike keeping a suitcase packed all the time, so he's always ready to travel. Just a thought, as you become more successful financially, I think that's good, and I think on I don't want to say a lower level, but when it comes with regards to productivity, I know I've spoken with agents and just saying like, hey, always have a always have a listing agreement, listing contract, a blank one, maybe even 2, in your car, always, right? And obviously a couple of pens. You just never know, right? You just never know. So always. And I know I've had a couple of stories where guys were like, hey, somebody called me off the blue, off the cuff, or this, for sale by owner I've been following up with, finally called me back, and they wanted me at this time. I didn't have my listing agreement available with me. I told them, let's do this other time. And by the time we got to that time, they'd already signed with someone else, right? So Mike, mentioned about keeping a suitcase packed all the time. So, with his clothes and things, so he could just grab it and go and fly, because a lot of his business over the years, he was, flying different cities, different countries. And so I would say on a productivity level, make sure you always have a listing agreement with you. Mike would always also tell you to always have your pre-listing or your, pre-qualification script, right? Your pre-qual. So have that with you so that no matter what, if you're setting a listing appointment, you can just jump right into your pre-qual by pulling out your pre-qual questions, right? So those are some things that we as agents could always make sure that we have. I would argue too that if you don't always wear a suit and tie, then I would say at least have one suit and tie readily available in your closet, your Superman outfit, if you will. That's what I think of mine as. So that, in the off, I'm not gonna say the off, because it does happen. It's not even an off chance. It will happen. You just don't know when. But when a seller or potential seller calls you and they want to set that last minute appointment and you're like, yeah, let's do it, right? Then you want to be able to just jump, grab your outfit and go, right? And I think that's also, just me being a military background, I think that's something you get used to, just having always a ready to go bag so that you can go perform your duties. So, Mike says you have to decide the kind of life you want to live, where you want to live. So he says you have to decide the kind of life you want, where you want to live, the cars you want, and the travel, right? So you got to decide. And there's, you can actually Google this. So there's a guy by the name of Jett, J-E-T-T. He was a big time multimillionaire in network marketing. And he has this series called Millionaire Development University. So if you Googled Millionaire Development University, you'll see a SoundCloud link pop up. And I think if you listen to part one on there, he talks about making the decision to become a millionaire. And for the longest time, I heard it, but I didn't hear it. I didn't internalize that. And the fact that, it was always one day, someday might be nice. But I never really made that decision that, hey, I'm going to become a millionaire and I won't stop until I get there, right? I won't stop prospecting. I won't stop working until I get there, I would like to be a millionaire by this date or by this year, right? I never really did that for a long time. It was something that would be nice. It'd be cool. It's great to see the people on stage and clap for them, but I had never made a personal decision myself to actually say, Isaac James will become a millionaire by ... right? And so on that audio, Jet, the reason I bring it up is he talks about that, that you have to make a decision to become a millionaire. And he says anybody can do it at any time from any place, right? But he was like, it starts with that decision. And he's like hopping in on that. And it sounds great, but it can go right over your head if you're not really paying attention. But I really, I would say, I hate to say it, but only too recently, within the past year or so, that I really understood what he meant when he said it starts with the decision. It's not about, oh, that would be nice to, let's talk about something that for most of us is out of reach and something that we would consider might be nice. You might think it's, was it ostentatious, I think would be the word, or you might think it's lasciviousness, right? But let's say we're not even going to say owning a private jet. That's too far. We'll say having the ability to charter a private jet, to buy a membership card. I don't know if you know, but I'll tell you because I've been looking at it. I'm interested in it. Maybe you're not. I am. A private jet card, depending on the company you go, you can buy 25 hours to use most of the year, 85% of the year. Maybe there's a few blackout dates, as you can imagine, probably like the 4th of July, Christmas, and Thanksgiving or New Year's, right? Just high traffic times where you wouldn't be the priority because you don't own the jet, right? But outside of, let's say, those major holidays, you can use the jet with the 24-hour notice anytime you want, right? There's a fleet of jets that you would have access to. And you can have 25 hours of flight time because they sell them in 25-hour increments. They start off about $250,000 to $300,000, right? So for most people, let's say having the ability to charter a jet, let alone own one, is just, that'd be nice, right? And even for the people that think that's beneath them or that's excessive or a waste, let me know how those people feel when they're at the airport and, the staff, right? They close that door in your face as you're in a dead sprint. You're like, hey, I'm here. I finally made it through security. We're coming. I've got my bag. Don't shut the door. I'm running dead sprint. I'm going to be there in 15 seconds. You see me. I see you. And they go, you're too late, right? When they do that to you and then you go to the counter and they give you a little $7 voucher and they say, oh, this is for you to eat. And you're like, I'm sorry, I thought we were in the airport. How am I supposed to eat with $7? You can't even buy a Happy Meal at McDonald's for $7 at the counter at the airport. You know what I'm saying? Let alone out in town. But at the airport, $7? Really? I'm talking real numbers here because I've had it happen with, I think it was United Airlines or something. Literally, they gave me a $7 per meal voucher and I called them out on it. But anyways, after they give you that and then you realize, hey, the next flight that might be available, oh, I'm sorry, it's already booked or overbooked, so you can't get on that. And then the next flight after that is tomorrow, the next day or whatever. So now you got to adjust all your plan. When you experience that once or twice, especially when it's beyond your control, and then hold on, let me add a little more fuel onto that. Now, when you're on time and you're sitting at the lounge waiting, and their plane is late, their flight attendant is tardy, their pilot is behind schedule, and your flight is delayed by an hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is. And that causes you to miss your layover flight because your flight departed late. And then they don't even give you an apology, no acknowledgement, nothing. So you could be 15 seconds late and they will punish you by pushing you back a day, 2 days, whatever. When they're late, there's no crime, there's no penalty, there's no recourse, right? I've experienced this. And if you fly at all on a regular basis, even just a couple of times a year, you know this to be true, whether you've experienced it or whether you've seen other people, because there's no way you can go to the airport more than 2-3 times a year without seeing this exact scenario I just described play out. Now, why did I mention all that? Because again, chartering a jet, flying private, it might seem beneath you until you experience that. And then you go, you know what? Might be nice to actually have the money to do that if I so choose. Maybe not all the time. Maybe I got time to burn. Maybe it doesn't matter. If I get there today, tomorrow, I don't care. But if I want to get somewhere, it would be nice to have a jet. Also, I don't have to go through TSA. Again, TSA, that's another nightmare. I'm going to just leave that at that. TSA is a whole nightmare you don't even deal with when you fly private. I don't know if you guys know that, but when you fly private, you literally show your ID card. They weigh your bags. They're not weighing your bag because there's a limit per se, right? The limit is the limit of the jet, like to literally take off. It's not, hey, we're limiting you to 50 pounds or else you got to pay a penalty. No, it's just we need to know how much bags weight we're putting on the plane so we can make our calculations and know that we can arrive to our destination safely and have enough fuel to get us there. That's literally the only reason why they're weighing your bags, right? But there's not necessarily a quote unquote limit. And the limit normally, depending on the size of the jet, could be 10, 12 bags, but usually it's way more than you would ever want to carry anyway, especially when you've been trained to fly commercial your whole life. You're coming with one check-in bag anyway, when you probably could bring 3 or 4 and still be good, all right? So anyways, this is why I say chartering a jet is on my radar. But again, I never, back to the original point, right? Stick with me. I kind of went out on a little tangent, a little rant there, sorry. But the point is, I never really made a decision to say by 2027, I want to charter my first jet or take my first chartered, private jet chartered trip. By 2028, I want to be able to buy my first 25-hour, $300,000 jet card. I never really made that decision before, like I have now, right? And so it was just out there. It was just, somewhere in my future. So that's why, to me, this point is so critical that Mike says you have to decide the kind of life you want, where you want to live, the cars you want, the travel, because that's going to determine the amount of money that you need to make and earn. And the amount of money you need to make and earn is going to determine the vehicle that you choose to get there, right? So if, and I'm trying to break this down. Let's see, how do we get this? Because some of y'all, even though you do well in real estate, right? You might be making a couple $100,000 a year or whatever. Gosh, maybe the way that sounded may have sounded condescending. I didn't mean it to be condescending, but I just meant that there's a lot of money to be made in real estate, and we all know agents that are making $2, $3, $5 million a year. Some of them even $1 million a month with their business of real estate, i.e., owning a team or brokerage. So that's why I say, a couple $100,000, that's entry level, right? It's like a rookie in the NFL making the league minimum. They're making $500,000 a year, which is not bad money, but by NFL standards, that's poor because there's people on the same team making $30 million a season, which is, you know, 6x of $500,000, right? So it's just, you guys get what I'm saying, right? Wait, no, actually, did I do that math right? No, it wouldn't be 6x. It would be 60x. Dang, did I do that math right? Let me pull out my calculator. I think I might confuse myself with a couple of zeros there. Yeah, I think that's 60x. Why can't I find a calculator? Okay, here we go. Yeah, let me just do that math real quick. Yeah, I think I mixed up my zeros. 500,000 times 60 would equal, golly. Yeah, so excuse me. It was just so big that I dropped the zero. Yeah, so the rookie is making the league minimum, just barely on the team, right? Making $500,000 a season. And there's someone else on that same team doing 60x, right? So that's why I say, a couple 100,000, because in our industry, especially as realtors, especially in the Mike Ferry organization, it's kind of entry level to be making a couple $100,000 a year. It means you're just starting to get a feel for the system. But when you really get it, you're going to be doing 100 plus transactions, depending on your market, of course. But at a minimum, you should be close to $1 million or the equivalent of $1 million, right? Obviously, some people are selling in Timbuktu and, they're selling $50,000 homes still, but their $500,000 there is the equivalent of $1 million somewhere else because, again, they're selling $50,000 homes, right? But you get what I'm saying. So anyways, point is, when you decide, hey, okay, I'm just using a rough of my goals, right? Not exact, but let's say you want, a couple houses that are worth, $2-3 million. And when we say worth, that's just, the quality that you like is somewhere in the, $3 to $5 million range. Okay, so you need $15 million of homes, 2-3 homes across the U.S. or maybe somewhere foreign, different country, whatever, right? Okay, so now you got that. Okay, you want a few cars, right? I know I definitely Lamborghini, Bentley. I'm not really a big Rolls Royce fan, but let's say Lamborghini, a Bentley, and Audi, a couple Audis. So we'll say 3 or 4 cars, all north of $150,000. We'll say $200,000 new. So $800,000, $900,000 worth of cars. Okay, got that. Okay, now I said I wanted to be able to charter a jet 25 hours. That's another $250,000, $300,000, right? So now we're looking at, let's say, $16-17 million net, if you will, lifestyle if I'm paying everything cash, right? You can get into payments and all that stuff, right? So we say, we're buying 3-4 houses that are, let's say, 5 million, so that's 15 million. Mention the cars, that's about $1 million for all the cars, and then I said another 300,000 plus you got to live. So now you see, okay, this is like roughly thereabouts about $20 million net worth or $20 million expenditure, if you will, right, to live this lifestyle. Plus, obviously, travel expenses. You got the jet, but now you got to pay for where you want to stay, et cetera. You guys understand all that. But the point is, okay, what does that cost per year? Well, let's just say it costs $1 million a year or $2 million a year to live like that and to be able to invest or whatever. Okay, so now you got to start looking, okay, what do I need to do to earn $1 million a year or $2 million a year? And how, what's the time frame do I want that to take? Do I want it to take 10 years? Do I want to take it 5 years? Do I want it to take 1 year? Right? And it depends on where you're starting from, right? If you're making $700,000 a year and you want to jump to $1 million, you might could do that in 6 months, right? If you're starting from zero, it might take more than maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't know. Depends on your skill set, depends on your market, right? But the point is, once you have looked at that, you looked at the numbers and you've decided, and I think the big key is deciding, right? Because there's something about one day, someday, maybe in the future versus making the decision and saying, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to work for. Napoleon Hill talks about that in his book, Think and Grow Rich, saying like, write out the cost and then write out what you're willing to give or the price you're willing to pay for, whatever it is that you want, right? So if I remember correctly, forgive me, I don't remember the exactness, but the basic premise was, let's say I want to earn $100 million by, let's say, 2035. In exchange for that, I will render service to hundreds of thousands of people in the form of providing excellent service as a listing agent and helping, X thousands of people sell their homes for top dollar or something like that, right? But the idea is you're writing down what you want, and you're also writing down the price that you're willing to pay, that what you're willing to give up to earn or produce what it is that you say that you want, right? So sometimes people don't understand that. So, maybe it could be like, if we look at like sports, okay, let's say you're an athlete, you want to win a gold medal, right? I want to win a gold medal in the next Olympics. I don't know when the next one is, so I know they're every 4 years, but whenever the next Olympics is, I want to win a gold medal. And then you would write, hey, in exchange for that, I will exercise every day, every week for the next 3 years. I will, monitor my diet. I will eliminate sugar from my diet. You know what I mean? Like, I will, hire the best dietitian, coach, trainer, blah, 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 but you get the idea, right? So I think that's so key, because a lot of times, especially with real estate, we get in it and at first we just want to earn money, just to get out of the rat race, just to be able to maybe earn more money, just to have a little freedom to travel. But really, you have to decide what it is that you're building. And I think that's so key. I was listening to an audio with Jim Rohn where he talks about, what are you building? And when you look at this from, I'm building a lifestyle, or maybe I'm building a financial foundation that I can stand on to go do something outside of real estate. Maybe I don't even want to be a real estate agent in 5-10 years. Maybe you want to be a broker owner. Maybe you still want to be selling 200-300 homes a year, 10-20 years from now, whatever it is. But really looking at it and thinking, okay, what is a lifestyle that I'm building? What am I making these calls for? I think when you make that connection, and forgive me, I'm like harping on this, but I think it's such a key point in deciding what it is that you want, because it can be as big as you want. I tell people all the time, most of your financial goals, almost all of them for the most part, has been accomplished by someone in the superstar retreat, whether it be Mike Ferry himself. Like, if you want to own a jet, done, Mike owns a jet. You want to own a yacht, done, Mike owns a yacht. If you want multi-million-dollar homes, obviously Mike has them. But there's dozens of other agents in the room that have multi-million-dollar homes, that own private jets, that own their own yachts, right? That own, six-figure watches, ladies with six-figure handbags, purses, right? They're in the room. So for most of us, whatever your goals and dreams are, I remember one guy got on stage one year, he had $500,000 a year in cash flow coming in at that point in time, just from his real estate that he had purchased by, selling homes. So even if you're like, hey, well, I don't worry about all that, I just want the cash, so I need 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month, like, people have already accomplished it. So you can do it, but it's like, what are you building towards? And when you decide on that, and you can always raise it up later, right? If something so big is too hard for you to conceptualize, maybe you could start with something less. But then once you get there, then you could always raise the bar, right? Or maybe you might get there and you go, hey, this is good enough, I don't need to raise the bar, whatever. But I think once you do that, then it really changes how you approach the business day to day, especially if you're reviewing those goals every day or every week, because now it's not just a grind, just to sell, the hope to close. Now you're building this future, this vision, and you're going to work way different when you do that. All right. Mike always says, it's always, what can I do? Right. And so this was just a going back again, we're talking a lot about mindset. I don't think I really realized that until now. I'm going over my notes with you, but I guess day two we really did cover a lot of mindset. Um, there's always going to be challenges, right? So we wrote the great goals. We want to charter the jet. We got the homes. You want the houses, cars, the kids' education paid for. You want your wife just dripping in jewelry or whatever, right? But there's going to be challenges always. Market's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's going to go sideways. NAR is going to get sued. Right? The deals are going to fall apart. Clients may die. I know I've experienced that now. I've had a client just die in the middle of a transaction. But Mike always says, what can I do? Focus on that, right? So it goes back to controlling your emotions, right? There's nothing we can do if your client dies. You can't revive them to close the deal, right? You got to go find another client, So it's just remembering like, hey, there's always something that I can do. And we always hear, control the controllables. So focus on that rather than the things that are beyond your control. Get excited about the no, because you need more no than yeses. And I think that's a challenge for all of us. None of us, I mean, I guess you're some sick wacko. Nobody really enjoys rejection on a consistent basis, right? I mean, you might thrive a little bit, if you're Michael Jordan and you doubted me and I'm going to prove you, I'm going to show you that I can do this thing. But for the most part, we would rather hear yes. Yes, come list my property at whatever price you want and I'll pay you a 6, 7, 8% commission. Come on. Right? That would be lovely. But the no's is really what builds your character, builds your resourcefulness. And when I say resourcefulness, I'm thinking more so, I can slip in my tongue, but your stick-to-itiveness, right? What's the word I'm searching for? Your persistence, that's the word I'm looking for. Persistence, right? Sometimes you hear people say, sometimes it's the 6 or 7 no's before they finally say yes, but circling around, trying to close multiple times, going for the appointment multiple times, extending the phone call with the client, keeping them on for another 10, 20, 30 seconds, another minute to circle back around to be able to ask for that appointment again, to get a little bit more information from them again, to finally get that yes when there's a no, or to finally get that yes when other agents would have quit and accepted the first or second or third no, right? So the no it's going to build you. And that's also what creates opportunity, because if everyone said yes and, everyone would just be, selling real estate, but then they wouldn't pay as well, right? The difference between a top producer and an average agent is the story they tell themselves. And that is so, so true. What are you honestly thinking days when you start your prospecting? Are you expecting to set an appointment? Are you just looking to do contacts? When you go on a listing appointment, are you expecting them to sign with you at a great price, or are you expecting a war, a battle, and them trying to convince you to overprice their home? What are you telling yourself, right? An offer comes in that's below asking. What do you tell yourself, right? So I believe we talked about this a little bit more in the last video, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but it just really goes back to what Mike talked about earlier, controlling your emotions, right? Really telling yourself. And I've heard this said a different way before, so I'm going to share it with you. You can choose to tell yourself 2 different stories, and both can be lies, right? So I'll give you an example. You can pick up the phone, or right before you pick up the phone, you can say, hey, this is going to be a great prospecting session. I'm going to set a listing appointment, or I'm going to set 2 lists, whatever your goal is, right? I'm going to set a listing appointment today. This is going to be a great prospecting session. Technically, that's a lie. You have no idea what's going to happen. You might just drop dead. I'm just being, I'm just exaggerating, right, for the point of reference, but you could drop dead. You don't know. People drop dead. You could literally drop dead and not even finish your prospecting session. That is a reality. You don't know, right? The phone tower could signal could just drop and whatever. A plane could crash into the cell phone tower and you lose cell service for the next 3 hours and you can't do your calls. An emergency could happen and you have to respond. Fire in the building, right? You got to get out. You didn't have time to grab your laptop. You didn't have time to grab your phone. You had to jump out the window. Now you can't prospect, right? And I'm just being exaggerating, right? Obviously, most likely these things won't happen, but they could happen, and they do happen on occasion, right? It's called life, right? Nobody woke up that day unless, they're sick in the hospital bed, right? They already on their last days in their hospice care. But most people didn't wake up that morning and said, you know what, I'm going to have a brain aneurysm, I'm going to have a stroke today, and I'm just going to die. That's probably going to happen today. No, they didn't. They started off that day normal, right? So saying, hey, this is going to be a great prospecting session, it's technically a lie. We don't really know that that's going to happen. But on the other hand, you could also come in and say, you know what, I mean, Mike says we should be prospecting. I know I just got to prospect. My goals say, I got to talk to 30 people, 40 people. Man, I don't really feel like it. Nobody's going to say yes today. I mean, oh my gosh, that'd be good if people pick up their phone, but hey, let's just get through it because, hey, during my 30, I can check the box, give it to my coach. That's also a lie. You could make one phone call, set an appointment, and be so excited and, boom. But which one is going to have you more empowered? The one where you're like, this is going to be a great prospecting session. I'm going to set a great pre-qualified listing appointment where I'm going to take it at a great price and it's going to sell quickly. Or people aren't going to hear from me. They're going to cuss me out. They're not really going to try. They're going to say they won't think about it. They're even thinking about selling themselves. They're going to rent it out, blah, blah, blah. But here we go, right? Both of these are technically lies. You don't know. But one of them is going to empower you to be a lot more excited, a lot more enthusiastic, a lot more positive. And so, telling yourself this story where you're like, hey, this is going to be great. That's the difference between top producers and average agent, where average agent might just, grit their teeth. And maybe they may not be that negative, but they might just be, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It might work. It might not. We'll see. I've set appointments before, hopefully. Right. Whereas the top agent is like, this next call. I think Brianne Green always says, hey, this is my next listing appointment. This is my next listing appointment. This is my next listing appointment. Every time she's, on the phone, the phone's ringing. And it's like, what a great mindset to have. This is my next listing appointment. This is my next listing appointment. Rather than, let's see if they answer. Hey, your property expired. Yeah. When you plan on interviewing the right agent for the job to sell your home, right? Versus, be excited, right? When do you plan on interviewing the right agent for the job of selling your home? Having some enthusiasm there, right? So the story you tell yourselves is the big difference between the top producer and the agent, because that story you tell yourself is going to obviously dictate your attitude, and your attitude is going to dictate your approach and obviously the way you work and your work ethic. You're as good as anyone in real estate if you change the story in your head. Again, Mike just really, re-emphasized the story that, not one person is technically better or more gifted than other. Like, no one's put them more, we aren't professional athletes, okay? No one's born with the gift of listing property, right? You just see this baby and you're just like, oh, look at this baby. He's going to be a great listing agent, and you're like sitting there, shaking this little pacifier like, yes, you are. You're going to sell hundreds of homes, right? Nobody's doing that. Nobody is at the elementary school and like, oh, yeah, this is right here. Oh, yeah, he's he's fast. He can run really fast, and he's got some type of athletic ability right there. Look at that. He can look at him. He's 6 years old. He's already ducking the basketball, and then, we can see that, right? Or, oh man, look at him. He's 6 years old. The guy is already, 5 foot tall. He's 6 years old. Look at him. Golly, look at him. He's hanging from the rim already. Like this guy's gonna be a basketball player. I mean, we know that happens, but at the same time, the same conversation, we look at Jimmy or Sally, and we're like, oh yeah, look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Sharp, look at him. He's got his suit together. He's got his necktie. He's got his little fake Rolex already. I mean, look at him. He's suited and booted. That guy's gonna be a listing agent. Oh yeah, look at him. Look at him. He looks like he's ready to go on appointment already. Look at him. He's studying his scripts. Look at him. He's gonna sell a lot of homes. When he grows up, little Johnny. Oh yeah, he's gonna grow up to be a realtor. Like no, nobody does that, right? Nobody goes to high school and they're like, hey, most likely to be a real estate agent, right? There's nobody that has that in their yearbook, okay? So the great part of this industry is the skills can be learned by anyone and you can master it and do a lot of business no matter who you are, guy, girl, young, old, handsome, ugly, speak English, don't speak English. I mean, let's just keep it a buck. Mike Ferry's in Russia. Mike Ferry is in Italy. Mike Ferry is in Europe. Mike Ferry's in America, right? So this system works around the world wherever there is capitalism and a standardized way of buying and selling real estate. This system works, right? So don't get caught up in, well, I'll just name a few names because we know them, right? Oh, I'm not Bernie. Oh, I'm not Josh. So therefore, I can't. Ibrahima, I'm not him. There's something about Mike Darda that, I don't have. A Karen Bernardi, she's just, right? Like, no, we all can do this if we learn the skills, develop it over time. You don't have to have some type of special athletic or communication gift to be able to do it. You can be quiet, you can be reserved, you can be super smart, you can be dumb. You need to at least be able to do basic math to be able to calculate your commission, I think. But that doesn't require you to have a NASA astronaut level IQ. I was a nuclear operator on submarines before real estate. You don't have to have that type of IQ to be able to sell a home, right? Okay, you just got to be able to look at some prices and go, hey, look, this apple sold for 10, this apple sold for 10, this apple sold for 10. Yours most likely won't sell for 15, sir. Does that make sense, right? Maybe 11, maybe 9, but it's not going to sell for $25 if your apple looks like all these other apples. Does that make sense, sir? Right? That's not a hard concept. All right. Wow. Mike was really going in on mindset on this day. Wow, I did not realize how much we really talked about. Make a decision, again, decision to control the story you tell yourself, right? So I won't hop on that too much because I think we already covered it, but we'll just say it's like motivation. They say motivation doesn't last. That's why I recommend it every day. It's like bathing. It doesn't last. You got to do it every day to get the effects of bathing. You got to bathe every day to feel clean, right? So controlling the story in your head is a day-to-day process of continually, again, having that discipline of making that decision that, hey, you know what? I'm not going to let the natural ups and downs of real estate affect my mindset, right? I've got my goals. I've got my dream that I'm building, right? I've got this life that I've decided I want to live, and I know what my actions are that I need to take to get there. I'm going to take them, and I'm not going to allow the deals falling out, the pissed off seller, the buyer canceling, or the other agent that's a complete idiot, right? We're not going to allow those things to affect us, right? And that doesn't mean that we're just stoic, that we never receive it. But Mike says, if you're going to be ticked off in your room by yourself where no one else is there, right? And then compose yourself, comport yourself to where now when you respond or when you speak with the client or you speak with the agent, the emotions are here, your tonality are agreeable, and you seek to resolve to get the transaction closed or to get the seller to come down or the buyer to go up, whatever it is, right? But you're not inserting your emotion into it because your emotion really doesn't help at all, right? The more you decide that, hey, you know what, me being calm, me being level-headed is going to help everyone, then that will, the more you make that decision and you commit to it, the better off you'll be. And the more deals you'll save, the smoother transactions will go in general when you can take that level-headed approach, right? And just because people can only be up here so long if you're down here and you're just cool, right? Because at some point they need some fire, right? The fire needs some oxygen. It needs some type of fuel. And if you're not giving them that, right? Because the Bible says, you know, a soft answer turneth away wrath, right? So basically meaning a soft reply, a gentle reply, it calms a person down, right? Because they need that energy to go back and forth with. But if they don't have that energy, but you're just responding calmly and logically and sensibly, then at some point they gotta bring their energy down too, right? Because you're not feeding into their foolishness, and nobody long term wants to be up here by themselves, right? Now, if you're yelling and telling a person that they're wrong and they know that they're wrong, you know, that lasts for a little bit. But when they're trying to go back and forth with you to achieve something, and they're trying to negotiate, and they're just up here and you're down here, and you're just holding your own, and you're like, yep, you know, I understand, but that's, you know, that's not what we're doing, or hey, that's not what I recommend. And they're up here. Eventually, they gotta bring their energy down, right? So just remember that. The last thing is a thought about starting a team or building a team. And Mike says most of us shouldn't do it because building a team is a completely different skill set than being a great real estate agent, right? And the best example I can think of is Michael Jordan, the player, versus Michael Jordan, the head coach. Michael Jordan, the head coach. Michael Jordan, the player. Yeah, love it. You know, freaking love it. Now, Nick Saban, head coach of Alabama. If you guys don't know who he is, basically he was one of the most winningest college football head coaches in recent history, right? Him as a coach, Nick Saban as a player, I don't think most people even knew that he played college football. But as a head coach, oh my gosh, highest paid head coach in his conference for 10 plus years. That was a part of his contract when he signed with Alabama. And he has the championships galore to show that it was worth paying him that much. But again, that just goes to show that those are two different skill sets. Nick Saban, the head coach, love. Him as a player, meaning him in his individual production, I don't even think he made the NFL. Didn't even, not as a player. But Michael Jordan as a player, oh, gosh. Whew. But as a head coach, no. Nobody wants Michael Jordan to be a head coach. Nobody's begging Michael to come coach, right? So it's the same thing with building a real estate team. You as an individual agent, what you do is totally different from building a team, being a leader, delegating responsibility, coaching and training up other agents, tapping into their motivation and helping build them up and hold them accountable to the goals and things that they said they would set. You know, I spoke with a gentleman by the name of Chase Ames. He owns, I think he's fully owner, but between him and his father, they own the Ames team out in Utah. And one of the things he shared with me, he said, man, you know, there's something about being in production, meaning being an individual agent, where when you can, you know, just you can work, you can grind, you can turn it up, and you can see the results of your efforts. Like, you know, it's 1-to-1. You know, the more I prospect, the more appointments I set, the more listings I take, the more listings I take, the more money I make, right? Like it's a very, you know, the link's very tight together. He's like, but when you have a team, man, you could put that effort in and you still might not get the same result because now you are leveraging people. And people are great and people are horrible at the same time, right? So just understand that building a team is a completely different skill set, and that just because you're a great agent and you know how to sell 200-300 homes a year doesn't mean that you're going to be able to coach other agents to be able to do the same, right? That you're going to be able to manage 5, 10, 15, 20 other agents and help them achieve their goals, because some of them, believe it or not, are not going to want to sell 100 homes a year. Some of them might only want to sell 20 and make $200,000 a year, and that's going to be, you know, what they want to accomplish their goals and their dreams, right? Some of them, they might want to sell 100 homes and make $1 million a year, and you're going to have to be able to coach and help and train them, right? And staffing, right? So staffing, the support team, the service coordinators, and then keeping them supported enough, because by the time you get someone that can do 100 transactions as an independent agent on your team, well, that person knows they have options. So what value are you bringing that you're contributing that they don't go out and, you know, go to a different brokerage that would give them 100% commission, right? Whereas you can only give 50, 60, right? So that you're profitable, right? So it's just understanding that it's a completely different skill set. And just because you're good at one doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be great at the other, which is, we all know there's a lot of quote unquote teams out there, especially, you know, during the pandemic years, 2021, where they don't exist now, you know. What was the prior example? I can't think of the guy's name, but his name is Ryan something. But it's the guy on YouTube. He used to have the mohawk, more or less, with the crazy colored hair. His name is Ryan something. He's like out in, I think, Las Vegas. And I remember, because I actually had a family member join this guy's team, and you know, he's big time, you know, YouTuber. He's got all his different colored hairs. Ryan something. And I remember he started his own real estate team and brokerage, you know, and I think it lasted maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe, if that. It was like a year. And then he had to shut it down, right? And he thought it was just going to be easy, you know, because he had had success in YouTube as being a marketer. He had success as baseball and other things. And it did not translate to him being a great real estate broker and coaching and trainer as far as, you know, listing and selling properties for his agents, you know? So that is something that I think is a prime example of someone having success in one area, but it not necessarily translating into another, because it's a completely different skill set. So with that, I think we're already over an hour. So we'll save the rest for the next video, but I guess, man, we really talked a lot about mindset in day 2. It didn't even capture that because, you know, so busy writing notes. But yeah, it's really what's between your ears that's going to make the difference. Obviously, it's the actions that you take on the day-to-day that determine it, but the software or the iOS of your phone is going to determine what your hardware is capable of doing and will do or won't do, because the hardware is already there, right? But you got to update the iOS software to get the hardware to do whatever you want it to do. And we are no different, right? What goes in our head determines what we see, what we do. And the best way I thought about explaining this, because I'm somewhat of a speaker. I haven't spoke professionally, but I've spoken in front of audiences many times, is I think of, if you're a crackhead and I drop you off in a city, you're going to go certain places. If you're alcoholic and I drop you off in the city, you're going to go certain places. But if you're a multi-millionaire and I drop you off in the city, you're going to go certain places. Now, I could drop all 3 of those people off, crackhead, alcoholic, and a multi-millionaire, And we'll just add another one just for fun, a person that loves to play golf. I could place all four of those people with the same money, same cell phone, same car, drop them off in the same corner in the same city at the same time, and they're going to go four different places. Why is that? Because of their mindset and what they're looking for, right? The millionaire is going to go one way. The person that loves golf is going somewhere else. The crackhead is going somewhere else. The alcoholic is going somewhere else, right? Now we know, because of our life experiences, the crackhead and the alcoholic, they might head in a similar direction. And the millionaire and the person that plays golf, they might head in a similar direction, right? Because there's some correlation there, right? More, I could be wrong, but normally those that are, strung out on crack are not necessarily avid golfers. I could be wrong. There could be some people that are functional addicts, but for the most part, they're not addicts, right? But again, you get my point. So when you look at the mindset of, okay, being a top producer, being a low agent, it all comes to, what are you thinking in between your ears? And then that decision of, how much you want to make, how much you want to earn, the decision to control your actions, the decision to control your emotions, all of that boiled up together, and your decision to, treat your body a certain way as far as exercising, controlling your diet so that you have the energy that you need, right? Controlling your schedule or creating a schedule so that you have more control of your time, so you're maximizing the time that you're doing your dollar producing activities. It all ties in together, right? And so a lot of times, I'll be honest, I was one of those people before where, I used to hear mindset, people say your mindset, the way you think, et cetera, and you go, man, just tell me what I need to do. I don't need all that. But the more I've studied success, the more successful I've become, the more I realize it's like, no, you literally do think differently in order to produce differently. And to be more specific, you set different standards for yourself in order to produce at different levels, Someone that is producing 100 transactions a year, prospecting is non-negotiable for them. Someone that produces 12 transactions a year, prospecting is optional for them. It's just a standard, right? But it's the way they think about prospecting that makes a difference. Someone who is in shape and fit all the time, working out, exercising, watching what they eat, that's a standard for them. It's not even negotiable. It's a standard. Someone who's overweight and out of shape, right? Well, they enjoy pleasurable eating and snacking more frequently, right? That's a standard for them. They enjoy the joy of eating food. That's why they have the excess weight. They enjoy it frequently. That's a standard for them, is enjoying food. And probably not exercising as frequently as they should, if any exercise at all, right? So you start seeing these things and then you start realizing like, wow, again, like I mentioned, reading the books, a lot of these well-to-do, highly successful, meaning people worth 9, 10 figures, they value reading on a regular basis as a part of what they do to earn their income. They feel that it gives them a mental edge or it gives them a mental acuity to be able to produce what they produce. They attribute it to reading. Well, people that don't earn that type of income, reading's usually not on the top of the list. So if it is, they're reading fiction books for entertainment, but they're not reading nonfiction to learn. So again, don't want to harp on it too much longer because I think you all get the point, and this is just to share my notes of what I've learned. But again, really, it just dawned on me about how much Mike really talks about mindset the second day in the notes, and really sharing that, hey, it's really what's in between your ears, and as he says it, what's the story that you're telling that's going to determine how far you get. Your attitude determines your altitude, or it's the story you're telling yourself that's going to determine your success or lack thereof. So all right guys, till the next video, let me know and I forgot to say it on the last one, but let me know your thoughts. Um, this is my YouTube channel, if you guys don't know. So, I enjoy speaking, and this is one of the ways I quote unquote practice and serve people by sharing these videos. But I would love to hear your thoughts, comments, questions, maybe further clarification, and whether these videos are valuable to you. It's certainly valuable to me because it also gives me, I guess, could say, excuse or a reason to review the notes and to cover it a second time, and go over it and comb through it again, and really extrapolate from it what I was writing down. Because a lot of times I'm just busy writing 100 miles an hour and trying to capture everything, but it's different when you actually get to go through it again and really meditate and chew on it and really go, wow, Mike said this, like excellent thought. So, but I would really appreciate your feedback. If you don't mind, leave a comment. A lot of you guys have my number. You can just shoot me a text directly or call, message, whatever. But yeah, I really appreciate that. All right, guys, take care. Till the next video.